You've tried setting boundaries. They ignored them. You've tried honest conversations. They twisted your words. You've tried distance. They pulled you back with guilt, drama, or fake emergencies. And now you're exhausted, drained, wondering if you're the problem. Let me tell you something that will change everything. You're not the problem. Your approach is. Because you've been trying to remove toxic people using methods that only work on reasonable people. And toxic people aren't reasonable. They're strategic. And if you want to beat strategy, you need better strategy. 2 years ago, I had someone in my life who was slowly destroying me. Every conversation left me drained. Every interaction somehow became about their problems, their needs, their drama. I set boundaries. They cried and made me feel guilty for having boundaries. I tried distance. They showed up unannounced or sent messages designed to pull me back in. I tried honest communication. They turned everything I said into proof that I was the one with issues. And I stayed trapped in this cycle for years because I kept thinking the same thing you're probably thinking right now. Maybe if I just find the right words. Maybe if I'm just more patient. Maybe if I show them enough love, they'll finally change. But here's what I learned the hard way. Toxic people don't change because you love them more. They change when removing them becomes less painful than keeping them. And sometimes, they don't change at all. Niccolo Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people refuse to accept. He wrote, "Men ought either to be indulged or utterly destroyed, for if you merely harm them, they will take revenge." He wasn't talking about violence. He was talking about commitment. Half measures don't work. Soft boundaries don't work. Gradual distance doesn't work. Because toxic people are experts at exploiting hesitation. They sense when you're unsure. They feel when you're wavering. And they use that moment to pull you back in. I watched this pattern repeat itself not just in my life, but in dozens of others. Smart, capable, strong people staying trapped with toxic individuals because they kept using approaches that were designed to fail. They kept trying to be kind to people who weaponized kindness. They kept trying to be understanding with people who used understanding as permission to take more. They kept trying to communicate with people who didn't want solutions, they wanted control. And that's when I realized something that changed everything. The problem wasn't that I didn't know how to set boundaries. The problem was that I was trying to set boundaries with someone who had no interest in respecting them. You can't negotiate with someone whose strategy is to never accept any negotiation. You can't reason with someone whose power comes from being unreasonable. You can't find middle ground with someone who sees compromise as weakness to exploit. So I stopped trying to make them understand. I stopped trying to find the magic words that would finally make them respect me. I stopped trying to gradually create distance while managing their feelings. And I did something that felt wrong, but worked perfectly. I removed them completely. No explanation. No final conversation. No closure. One day they were in my life. The next day they weren't. And you know what happened? Nothing exploded. The world didn't end. They didn't show up at my door. They moved on to their next target, and I got my life back. But here's what nobody tells you about removing toxic people. It's not the removal that's hard. It's overcoming the programming that makes you think removal is wrong. Because you've been taught your whole life that cutting people off is cruel, that giving up on relationships is failure, that good people always try harder. But Machiavelli would tell you that's exactly how toxic people stay in power, by convincing you that protecting yourself makes you the bad person. Let me be very clear about something. Toxic people are not confused about what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. The manipulation isn't accidental. The guilt trips aren't mistakes. The boundary violations aren't misunderstandings. They are strategic choices designed to maintain control over you. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. Because you stop seeing them as someone who needs your help and start seeing them as someone whose entire strategy depends on you not protecting yourself. Most people struggle with this realization. They want to believe that everyone is basically good, just wounded or confused. And maybe that's true for most people. But toxic people aren't most people. Toxic people have figured out that playing victim gets them power. That creating drama gets them attention. That violating boundaries gets them control. And they will not stop using these strategies as long as they keep working. I used to think I was being compassionate by staying. I thought I was being strong by enduring. I thought I was being loyal by giving chance after chance. But I wasn't being any of those things. I was being a resource to be extracted. And the moment I realized that, the moment I understood that my presence in their life wasn't helping them grow, it was enabling them to stay exactly as they were, that's when I knew what I had to do. Not gradually, not eventually, not after one more conversation. Immediately, completely, permanently. Machiavelli wrote about how to remove threats to your kingdom. And your peace is your kingdom. Your energy is your territory. Your mental health is your fortress. And anyone who repeatedly attacks those things isn't a friend having a hard time. They're an invader who's learned you won't defend yourself. So today, I'm going to show you exactly how to remove toxic people permanently. Not through confrontation, not through explanation, not through hoping they'll finally understand. Through strategic removal that leaves no opening for them to return. But first, you need to understand why everything you've tried so far has failed. Because if you don't understand the psychology of why soft approaches don't work, you'll just repeat the same patterns with different people. And that cycle ends today. The reason you can't remove toxic people isn't because you're weak. It's because you're using weapons designed for a different kind of battle. You're trying to set boundaries with people who see boundaries as challenges to overcome. You're trying to communicate with people who use your words against you. You're trying to create distance with people who specialize in closing gaps. Every strategy you've been taught assumes the other person wants a healthy relationship. But toxic people don't want healthy relationships. They want controllable ones. And the moment you understand this difference, you stop wasting energy trying to fix something that was never designed to work. Let me break down the 3 types of toxic people you're dealing with. Because if you can't identify which one you're facing, you can't deploy the right removal strategy. The first type is the manipulator. This is the person who never asks directly for what they want. Instead, they create situations where you feel obligated to give it. They don't say, "I need money." They say, "I don't know how I'm going to pay rent this month," while looking at you expectantly. They don't say, "I want attention." They create crises that force you to drop everything and focus on them. They're not confused about what they're doing. They've learned that indirect manipulation works better than direct requests because it makes you feel like helping was your idea. And when you try to set boundaries with a manipulator, they don't argue. They just make you feel guilty for having boundaries in the first place. The second type is the narcissist. This is the person who sees you as an extension of themselves, not as a separate human being. Your feelings only matter when they affect the narcissist's feelings. Your problems only exist when they inconvenience the narcissist. Your achievements are either minimized or claimed as partially theirs. And when you try to set boundaries with a narcissist, they react with rage or complete dismissal. Because in their mind, you don't have the right to set boundaries. You exist to serve their needs. The third type is the energy vampire. This person isn't necessarily malicious. They're just completely incapable of existing without draining everyone around them. Every conversation becomes about their problems. Every interaction leaves you exhausted. They don't necessarily manipulate or control. They just take and take and take until there's nothing left of you. And when you try to set boundaries with an energy vampire, they don't respect them because they literally cannot see beyond their own needs. Now here's what all 3 types have in common. They will never voluntarily leave your life because you provide something they need. Resources, attention, emotional labor, validation, or just someone to control. And as long as you keep providing it, they will keep taking it. This is why soft approaches fail. You're trying to gradually reduce what you give, hoping they'll naturally drift away. But they won't. They'll just increase the pressure to get what they're used to getting. You try to set a boundary. They escalate the manipulation until you drop the boundary. You try to create distance. They create drama that pulls you back in. You try to have an honest conversation. They twist everything until you're apologizing for trying to protect yourself. I did this for years. I'd set a boundary, they'd violate it, and I'd enforce it weakly because I didn't want to seem harsh. I'd create distance, they'd manufacture an emergency, and I'd come running because I didn't want to seem uncaring. I'd try to explain why their behavior hurt me, and they'd convince me I was too sensitive, too demanding, too much. And the cycle continued because I kept thinking the problem was my execution. If I just explained better, if I just set boundaries more clearly, if I just gave them one more chance to understand. But the problem was never my execution. The problem was my strategy. I was trying to remove someone using methods that required their cooperation. And toxic people will never cooperate with their own removal. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He watched princes try to gradually reduce the power of dangerous advisors, only to get betrayed. He saw leaders try to slowly distance themselves from toxic allies, only to get undermined. He learned that threats to your kingdom don't respond to gentle pressure. They respond to complete removal. He wrote, "Injuries should be done all at once, so that being less tasted, they offend less." Translation: when you remove a toxic person, do it completely and immediately. Not gradually. Not with multiple conversations. Not with chances to change. Because a slow removal is just prolonged suffering for you and prolonged opportunity for them. Here's what that looks like in practice. A gradual removal means slowly reducing contact, which gives them time to adjust their strategy and find new ways to pull you back in. A complete removal means they wake up one day and you're gone. No warning. No negotiation. No opening. A gradual removal means explaining why you're creating distance, which gives them ammunition to argue, guilt trip, or manipulate. A complete removal means no explanation, because explanation implies they deserve one. A gradual removal means maintaining some connection while trying to reduce the damage, which is like trying to be slightly less poisoned. A complete removal means cutting off all access, which is the only way to actually stop the poison. I know this sounds harsh. I know it feels wrong. I know you're thinking, but what if they really need me? What if I'm abandoning them during a hard time? What if I'm the bad person for not trying harder? And that's exactly the programming that keeps you trapped. Because toxic people are experts at making you believe that protecting yourself makes you cruel. But let me ask you something. If someone repeatedly hurt you, and you asked them to stop, and they didn't stop, and you asked again, and they still didn't stop, at what point does continuing to give them access to hurt you become self-destruction rather than compassion? You're not abandoning someone who needs help. You're protecting yourself from someone who refuses to stop harming you. And there's a massive difference between those two things. Toxic people need help, but they don't need your help. They need professional help, self-awareness, and a genuine desire to change. And none of those things require your presence. In fact, your presence often prevents their growth because you keep absorbing the consequences of their behavior, which removes their motivation to change. The most compassionate thing you can do for a toxic person is remove the person they're toxifying. Sometimes people don't change because they're comfortable, and they're only comfortable because someone keeps making their comfort possible. Now let me show you exactly how to remove toxic people permanently. Not the theory, the actual protocol. Because understanding why you need to do it is one thing. Knowing how to execute it is something completely different. The first step is the decision phase. And this is where most people get stuck forever. They keep gathering evidence, weighing options, questioning themselves. Is this person really toxic, or am I being too sensitive? Are they going through a hard time, or is this a pattern? Should I give them one more chance, or is that just delaying the inevitable? Let me save you years of this mental torture. If you're asking these questions, you already know the answer. Healthy relationships don't require constant evaluation of whether they're destroying you. The fact that you're researching how to remove someone means you already know they need to be removed. You're just looking for permission. So here it is. You have permission to protect yourself. You have permission to prioritize your peace. You have permission to remove anyone who repeatedly harms you, regardless of their intentions, their history with you, or their reaction to being removed. Once you've made the decision, the second step is preparation. And this is critical because toxic people will fight back. Not always directly. Sometimes they'll use other people to fight for them. So you need to prepare for 3 things. First, prepare your story. Not because you owe anyone an explanation, but because other people will ask. And your story needs to be simple, calm, and final. Not defensive, not detailed, just clear. Something like, that relationship wasn't healthy for me, so I ended it. I'm not discussing it further. Practice saying this until you can deliver it without emotion, without justification, without opening the door to debate. Second, prepare for flying monkeys. These are people the toxic person will send to argue on their behalf, gather information, or guilt you into returning. Friends, family members, mutual acquaintances who suddenly have opinions about your decision. Your response to flying monkeys is always the same. I appreciate your concern, but this decision is final and not up for discussion. Then you stop engaging. Don't explain. Don't defend. Don't provide details they can report back. Just repeat the boundary and end the conversation. Third, prepare for the hoovering. This is when the toxic person tries to suck you back in. And they will try. They'll apologize. They'll promise they've changed. They'll create emergencies that require your help. They'll show up at places you frequent. They'll use whatever strategy has worked in the past. And your job is to recognize it as strategy not genuine change. Because real change takes months or years of consistent different behavior, not a sudden transformation that coincidentally happens right after you remove them. Now, the third step is the actual removal. And this is where Machiavelli's principle applies completely. You do it all at once. Not gradually. Not with multiple conversations. All at once. If there's someone you live with, you plan your exit and execute it in one move. You don't announce you're thinking about leaving. You don't negotiate terms. You plan, prepare, and then you're gone. If there's someone in your social circle, you block them everywhere simultaneously. Not just unfriend. Block. No access to your posts, your location, your life. Complete digital removal in one action. If there's someone you work with and can't avoid completely, you go gray rock. This means you become the most boring, unresponsive, emotionally blank person they've ever encountered. No reactions. No personal information. No emotional availability. Just professional minimum interaction. The key is that all of this happens at once, without warning, without negotiation, without creating an opportunity for them to talk you out of it. Because the moment you announce your intention to create distance, you've given them time to deploy countermeasures. Toxic people are like emotional terrorists. They don't respond to threats. They only respond to action. And by the time they realize you're serious, the removal is already complete. I learned this the hard way. The first time I tried to remove a toxic person, I told them we needed to talk. I explained why the relationship wasn't working. I gave them a chance to respond. And you know what happened? They cried, apologized, promised to change, and I gave them another chance. 3 months later, everything was exactly the same. Because I'd given them an opportunity to perform instead of requiring them to actually transform. The second time, I learned. No announcement. No explanation. No final conversation. One day they texted me. The text went undelivered because they were already blocked. They called. The call didn't go through because the number was blocked. They showed up at a place I used to frequent. But I'd already changed my patterns. Within 2 weeks, they moved on to someone else. And I got my life back. Machiavelli would call this decisive action. Not cruel. Not cold. Strategic. Because the goal isn't to hurt them. The goal is to protect yourself. And protection requires decisiveness. Now, the fourth step is managing the aftermath. Because removing a toxic person doesn't mean the battle is over. It means the battle has shifted, and you need to be ready for what comes next. The first thing that happens is you'll feel guilty, even though you made the right decision, even though they deserve to be removed, even though you gave them countless chances. You'll still feel guilty. This is normal. This is the programming fighting back. This is every message you've ever received about being a good person, being forgiving, giving people chances. Your job is to feel the guilt without acting on it. Feel it, acknowledge it, and let it pass. Because guilt is just an emotion. It's not evidence that you made the wrong choice. The second thing that happens is they'll test your boundaries. They'll try to reach you through methods you didn't think to block. Email, physical mail, showing up at your workplace, using someone else's phone to contact you. And every single time this happens, you maintain complete silence. No response. Not even stop contacting me. Because any response, even a negative one, teaches them that persistence works. Complete silence teaches them that the door is permanently closed. The third thing that happens is people will judge you. They'll call you harsh. They'll say you didn't try hard enough. They'll question why you couldn't just work it out. And you'll be tempted to defend yourself, to explain all the things you tried, to justify your decision. Don't. People who judge you for protecting yourself were never going to support you anyway. And people who matter will respect your boundaries, even if they don't understand your reasons. Here's what nobody tells you about life after removing toxic people. The space they leave behind feels strange at first. Not bad, just strange. You suddenly have energy you didn't know you were missing. Conversations that used to drain you for days are just gone. Drama that used to consume your thoughts has evaporated. And in that space, something unexpected happens. You start to remember who you were before they entered your life. I didn't realize how much of myself I'd lost until I got it back. The hobbies I'd abandoned because they always needed my attention. The friendships I'd neglected because they always created conflict with those friends. The goals I'd postponed because their chaos always took priority. All of it came back. Not immediately, but gradually, like color returning to a black and white photograph. And that's when I understood something Machiavelli knew 500 years ago. The greatest threat to your kingdom isn't the enemy at the gates. It's the enemy you invite inside and refuse to remove. Because external threats are obvious. You can see them coming. You can prepare defenses. You can rally your forces. But internal threats are insidious. They convince you they belong there. They make you question whether protecting yourself makes you the villain. They drain your resources so slowly you don't notice until you're running on empty. Toxic people are internal threats. And the moment you recognize them as such, the moment you stop seeing them as relationships to fix and start seeing them as invasions to repel, everything becomes clear. You're not abandoning someone. You're evicting an occupying force. Now let me address the question you're probably asking yourself right now. What if I'm wrong? What if they really were just going through a hard time? What if I remove them and later realize I made a mistake? Here's the truth. If you remove someone and later discover you were wrong, you can apologize and rebuild. But if you keep someone toxic and later discover you were right, you can't get back the years they took from you. The cost of being wrong about removal is temporary discomfort and a possible apology. The cost of being wrong about staying is permanent damage to your mental health, your other relationships, your goals, and your sense of self. Risk the temporary. Don't risk the permanent. And here's something else. Truly good people, people who genuinely care about you, if you remove them by mistake, they won't wage war against you. They won't send flying monkeys. They won't create drama. They'll be hurt, confused, but they'll respect your decision and give you space. Toxic people, they'll prove exactly why you needed to remove them by how they react to being removed. So if you're still unsure, remove them and watch their response. Their behavior in removal will confirm whether the removal was justified. But I don't think you're unsure. I think you know exactly who needs to be removed. You've known for a while. You've just been looking for permission to do what you already know needs to be done. So here it is again. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to prioritize your peace over someone else's comfort. You are allowed to remove anyone who repeatedly harms you. And you don't need to wait until you've tried everything. You don't need to exhaust every possible approach. You don't need their permission. You don't need anyone's approval. You just need to decide. And then you need to act. Completely. Immediately. Permanently. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But I'd add something to that. It's better to be alone than in toxic company. Because loneliness is temporary. You can find new people. Better people. People who add to your life instead of subtracting from it. But the damage from toxic people compounds. Every day you stay is another day of your life you're giving to someone who doesn't value it. Every week you wait is another week of energy you'll never get back. Every month you delay is another month of your potential being drained into someone else's dysfunction. And for what? So you can say you tried? You already tried. So they have another chance? They already had hundreds. So people won't judge you. People will judge you no matter what you do. The only question is whether you'll prioritize their judgment over your peace. And if you choose their judgment, you'll spend your whole life managing other people's opinions while your own life falls apart. I spent years doing that. Keeping toxic people around because I was afraid of what others would think if I removed them. Afraid I'd look cold. Afraid I'd look like I gave up. Afraid I'd look like the bad person. And you know what I got for all that fear? Nothing. The toxic person stayed toxic. The judgers kept judging. And I lost years of my life I'll never get back. It wasn't until I stopped caring about looking like a good person and started actually being good to myself that everything changed. Because being good to yourself sometimes means being ruthless with others. And that's not a character flaw. That's wisdom. So let me tell you what happens when you finally remove toxic people permanently. At first, you'll feel relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. Like you've been holding your breath underwater for years and finally surfaced. Then you'll feel guilt. We already covered this. Feel it, don't act on it. Then you'll feel anger. Anger at them for treating you that way. Anger at yourself for accepting it for so long. This anger is healthy. It's your self-respect waking up. Let it fuel your commitment to never accept that treatment again. Then you'll feel grief. Because even toxic relationships are still relationships. And removing them means accepting that the version of them you hoped they'd become will never exist. Grieve that loss. It's real. Finally, you'll feel peace. Real peace. Not the fake peace of avoiding conflict. Not the fragile peace of walking on eggshells. But the deep, unshakable peace of knowing that you protected yourself. That you chose yourself. That you refused to be anyone's emotional punching bag, resource pool, or drama generator. And that peace? That peace is worth more than any relationship. Because from that peace, you can build a life. Real friendships, healthy relationships, goals you actually achieve because no one's sabotaging them. Energy for the things that matter because no one's draining it on things that don't. Machiavelli knew that kingdoms weren't built by princes who kept everyone happy. They were built by princes who removed threats and protected their territory. Your peace is your territory. Your energy is your kingdom. Your future is your legacy. And anyone who repeatedly threatens those things has already declared war on you. You're just finally deciding to fight back. Not with their weapons. Not with drama, manipulation, or revenge. With the most powerful weapon available to you. Complete removal. Permanent absence. Strategic silence. They can't drain you if they can't reach you. They can't manipulate you if they have no access. They can't guilt you if they can't communicate. And they can't take your future if you've already removed them from it. So here's what you do next. Right now, before the motivation fades, before doubt creeps back in, before you talk yourself out of it again, you make a list. Every toxic person who needs to be removed. Every relationship that takes more than it gives. Every person who makes you feel worse about yourself instead of better. Then you execute. All at once. Block, remove, exit. No explanations. No final conversations. No chances to manipulate you into staying. Just removal. Clean. Complete. Permanent. And if you're scared, good. That means you're doing something that matters. If you feel guilty, expected, that means you're breaking old programming. If you doubt yourself, normal. That means you're making a real change. But do it anyway. Because on the other side of that fear, that guilt, that doubt, is a version of you that you've forgotten exists. The version that isn't constantly exhausted. The version that has energy for the things that matter. The version that doesn't accept mistreatment as the price of connection. That version is waiting. And the only thing standing between current you and that version is a decision. Not a perfect decision. Not a decision everyone will understand. Just a decision to finally, permanently, completely remove the people who are destroying you. Make that decision today. Execute it now. And watch how fast your life transforms when you stop letting toxic people occupy space they were never worthy of. You deserve peace. You deserve relationships that build you up. You deserve a life that doesn't require constant defense against people who claim to care about you. And the moment you remove the people preventing that life becomes possible. So stop waiting. Stop hoping they'll change. Stop thinking one more conversation will fix it. And start protecting yourself with the same ruthlessness they've been harming you. Because your peace isn't negotiable. Your energy isn't unlimited. And your life is too valuable to waste on people who don't value it. Remove them. Completely. Permanently. Today. And finally, start living the life they've been preventing you from.